Hello and welcome to Explorer Classroom. My name is Jennifer Bergen and I am a National Geographic Explorer. And today I'll be your host. At National Geographic, we believe that anyone can be an explorer and that you have the power to make a difference in the world, no matter how old you are. Explorer Classroom is here to inspire you with stories from the field and to connect you with our National Geographic Explorers live to answer your questions. Before we get into today's lesson, I'd like to welcome all of the classes who will be joining us today, especially La Paz, Higgins, Sherwood, and Chester County Middle Schools, Maritime and Science Technology Academy and the Fulton School, E.W. Oliver, Hoffman Boston, and Moorestown Elementary Schools, hey littles, EBS Anandia, ESHDEI, and the Adams family. We are so glad that you are all here with us today. Today, our explorer is Elisabeth Henschel. Elisabeth is a Brazilian biologist who specializes in ichthyology, which means she studies fish. She is a professor and researcher based in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and her work takes her into the field to the Amazon rainforest and the Atlantic forest on the east coast of Brazil. This is where she searches for fish in distinct rivers, collects them, and then takes them back into her lab to examine them. She has discovered not one, not two, but 7 new species of fish in the Amazon River Basin with her team. And there are still more fish species just waiting to be discovered. Today, Elisabeth will be joining us live, but first, she is going to take us into the Atlantic forest to show us how she collects fish specimens, why it is important to study these fish, and what we have to learn from our little fishy friends. Let's connect with Elisabeth in the field.
I am Elisabeth Henschel, and I am a Brazilian professor, researcher, and National Geographic explorer. I am an ichthyologist, which means that I am a scientist who studies fish and everything else related to fish, such as where they live, what they eat, and how many species of fish exist. I am here with my colleagues in this beautiful river in the Atlantic forest, and we are going to collect some fish to investigate the biodiversity of fish here. And what about you? Do you like fish? Do you want to join me in this adventure? Let's go!
Yes, I want to be a part of this adventure. How about you? Show me a fish if you're ready. So I am so excited to see Elisabeth and her team in action, and I am sure that you are too. But before we join Elisabeth on this adventure, we have a question for you. If you were out in the field, what would you be looking for? Students, could you share aloud with your teachers or with your families? And then teachers and families, type the answers into the chat bar. Let's see, what kinds of things would you be looking for if you were out in the field, specifically in the Atlantic forest? All right, I'm seeing some of you are looking for Nemo. We're always trying to find Nemo. I've got an anaconda, the habitat of fish, a frog. Someone wants to find little monkeys. Yeah, forget those big ones. We want those tiny ones with the little golden cheeks. I love those. Parrots, butterflies, foxes, the raccoon around my house, deer, or the green tarpon. I think that's a turtle, isn't it? Or that's terrapin. Tarpon. I wonder what that is. Fish, snakes, spiders and wolves, our goldfish, our fish laying eggs, piranhas, the octopi, dinosaurs, lizards, and bugs. Oh my stars, excellent. I can't wait for us to do some more observation in the Atlantic forest. Obrigado for sharing your ideas. Now let's go back into the field with Elisabeth.
I am here with my friends Axel and Paulo, and we suspect that there might be a new species of fish here in this river. So we're going to stay here the whole day to photograph the environment and to collect the specimens and take some observations of where exactly in the river each fish is found, for example, under the rocks or nearby the margins. Then we'll take some more notes and collect this fish and take some of them to the laboratory for further investigation. We have here a camera with Paulo and distinct types of fish nets of distinct sizes and shapes to collect the fish, and we are wearing proper clothes to prevent accidents.
So we just heard from Elisabeth how she and her team search for fish in the river and how they record what they find and where they find it. Why would these details be important? You know, some of you shared with me earlier what you would be looking for in the field, but now I would like for you to think about the animals and the plants around where you live in your community. What lives there? I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. All right, let's start typing into the chat bars. What kinds of plants and animals are you going to see in your community? All right, if you're like me, yeah, we've got squirrels, butterflies, deer. There was a deer on my playground. I'm in Northern Virginia. That's crazy. Ants, oh yeah, tiny creatures too. More foxes, snakes. You must have caught 3 weeks ago's episode. Butterflies, fireflies, iguanas, chipmunks, alligators. You must live somewhere different than me. Possums, grasshoppers, pine trees. Thank you for mentioning the plant. I was feeling they were left out. Flowers, mosquitoes, turkeys, hawks and owls. This is a great variety. Oh, mangoes. I love mangoes. Okay, so now that we've thought about the plants and the animals in our community, where we live, can you think about, why is it there? Why is this plant in your community? Why is this animal? I don't have alligators in my community. I want to know why it's in your community. Let's think about it. All right, let's share some answers in the chat bar. Why are certain plants and animals in your community? Okay. Someone said that an animal will look for food or water nearby. Okay, so animals pick their homes based on food and water. What else? We all have different ecosystems. Some plants and animals are native to certain areas. What else? Some animals need to build homes. Okay, so they're looking for places where resources are. Oh, HFB STEM said because of a food chain. Miss Barron's 7th grade science learners are talking about climate. Oh, I love all these things that you're thinking about. Yes, Miss Mayeli's class, weather. Weather does matter to animals and plants. Well, great answers, everybody. Obrigada. Yes, animals and plants will live where their basic needs can be met, just like us. They stay where they can find food, water, a safe place to stay, a mate. This is called their habitat. And because we know that animals have to live in a habitat to survive, we can learn a lot about an animal by looking for clues in their habitat. For example, I know the squirrels in my neighborhood live near me because they have access to trees, fruit, and nuts. But what about Elisabeth? Elisabeth and her team are looking for clues about the fish that they found so they can use that information and determine what are the fish eating, where are they hiding, and who might be their predators. So well done, everybody. Thank you for thinking about climate, weather, habitats, food webs. Let's go back with Elisabeth to the Atlantic forest. Let's see what she's found.
We suspect we found a new species of fish here in this river in the Atlantic forest, which means that nobody discovered this species of fish before. This is a very important finding because scientists, the government, and the society need to know what species and how many species exist in a place in order to preserve the environment and the animals. Without a description of new species, we wouldn't know the name of any animal. So this is how we take the fish to the laboratory. So you can see that they are here with water from the river where they were found, and this will allow us to bring them alive to the laboratory to further investigate if they are in fact new species or not. But we are very sure that they are. Given this important finding, now it's time to go back to the lab to further investigate this fish.
Wow. I cannot wait to find out what Elisabeth is going to do with the fish in the lab. But before that happens, maybe you're like me, and maybe you're wondering, what made Elisabeth suspect that the fish that she found are actually a new species? We have a quick poll for everybody. Why don't you take a look at these answers and choose the choice that you think is best? Teachers, you can let us know what your class thinks. Again, the question is, what made Elisabeth suspect that the fish she found were likely a new species? A, they have a distinct color pattern. B, there's a new morphology, different teeth and fins, etc. C, they live in a place where nobody went before. D, they have a different behavior from all other species of fish. Or E, all of the above. All right, it looks like so far we have people saying all of the above, that all of these come into play when looking for a new fish species. Oh, but someone just added their answer. There is a distinct color pattern. It looks like 67% of us so far are saying B now. There was a new morphology. There are different teeth, fins, etc. All right, so we've heard A, color pattern, B, new morphology, E, all of the above. Oh, now it looks like some of you are going with D. There is a different behavior from all other fish species. Oh, wait, just in. There are fish that live in a place where nobody has gone before. Okay, so all of our answers have had somebody choose them. I wonder what it's going to be. Well, I think we get to find out from the expert herself. We are so excited to have Elisabeth with us here today live. She is going to be answering questions from our students. Elisabeth, will you please say hello?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you, and I hope you love fish as much as I do. So we can talk a little bit more about your expectations, if you like science, and whatever type of questions you might have. Hi.
Oh, I'm so glad you are with us. Thank you for being so excited to talk with us about your passion, fish. We cannot wait to hear more about the fish that you found in the Atlantic forest. But first, can you help us with the poll? Why did your team suspect that this was a new fish species?
So first, we went to a very poorly explored area, and although it's close to a huge city, Rio, nobody went there before. So it definitely increases the chance that we find something new that nobody ever seen before. So second, the color and the shape of these animals are very distinct from everything we've seen before. So we take this fish to the lab to confirm that. And third, we also found out that this fish explore different habitats. They live in a specific part of the river that is also different from other species we knew. So these differences raised our expectations that this fish actually belong to new species.
Wow, it sounds like you and your team have to pay really close attention to not just how fish look, but where they are and how they behave.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a very demanding work, but it's very rewarding too, because everything that demands your attention, but you love that, it's a pleasure to do this kind of work. So we usually capture the fish. I mean, when we are in the river, lots of fish come into the fish net, but we only take to the lab the fish we need to do our studies. So we have special permissions to work with these animals, and the other ones are released back to the river, so they just can like continue their lives throughout the time. So this is how we do it. Like we have some suspicions before, like some suspects that these fishes might belong to new species, and then we go to the field not only once, but several times to have a good amount of observation to study them.
Oh my gosh, I think you prepared a clip for that. Can we see this
Yeah,
clip of you taking your new species back to the lab?
sure.
The first thing we do is to put the fish inside the jar filled with alcohol and with a paper informing where they were collected. So they stay inside these jars with alcohol for more than like 100 years. So this is a very important procedure to preserve this fish for almost forever. And then if we want to take a look at their external morphology, like their fins, their eyes, and all other structures like scales too, we use this stereo microscope to examine them. So here you can see what happens when we look inside a stereo microscope. So we can see an amplified vision of this fish. Another very important procedure we do to examine the fish's bones and structures is called clearing and staining. So we basically put the fish inside a jar with an enzyme that eats all its muscles and organs, and then we can put some color on their bones. So here we're using pink to see the fish bones, and then we can count their vertebrae and see the fin structure and what the fish has eaten and all things other. This is very important to us to determine if the species is new or not. So we can compare, for example, the number of vertebrae of this fish with other existing fish species.
Wow. Thank you, Elisabeth. Obrigada for taking us into the field and then into the lab with you. All right, we are going to be kicking off the Q&A portion of the show. That's right, questions and answers. If you are watching online, could you please send us your questions in the chat bar? We record them as you send them in, so please only send each question once, and make sure to type who is asking the question and where you are writing in from. We would love to give you a shout out. If you're on screen though, clear your throats, get your voices nice and loud, because I'll be calling on you to ask your question live with Elisabeth. Let's go to one of our YouTube questions. This is coming from Axel B in Albuquerque, and Axel wants to know, what is the biggest fish that you have ever collected as a sample?
Well, that I've ever collected, it's not that huge. It was actually a candiru, kind of like this size. Well, here in Brazil, we use centimeters, so I don't know how many inches would that be, but it's like the size of my hand. And because I work with small to medium-sized species of fish, but the largest I've ever seen was a pirarucu, which is the largest freshwater species in the world. So people here in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, they usually eat this fish, and they have also very cultural importance, very strong cultural importance. So there are some indigenous stories that say that one person from a community was very mad with the other one from his community, and he went to the river, and then he became a fish, and the fish would be the pirarucu, and it's very huge.
We have a question from a YouTuber at Victoria's Homeschool. Joseph wants to know, has a fish ever bitten you?
Yeah, sure. I was
even bitten by a dead fish once. I mean, it's very common that when you put your hands on the fish, of course, it is very stressed. So it is not uncommon that they bite you. And if the fish has some spines, they can also like hurt you with the spines. So, I mean, you got to be careful and know where you put your hands on. And here in Brazil, we also have the piranhas. So the piranha, it's not unusual that piranhas, when even if they're dead, they bite the person because they keep like a muscular activity even before death. So I have a friend that once was preparing a piranha and he was bitten by a dead fish, basically.
I'm curious, besides the species that we saw today, are there other species that you encounter when you are out in the field?
Yeah, sure. So when we use fish nets in the river, of course, lots of other different species of fish come, but beyond the ones we're trying to collect. So here is electric fish, a fish that can emit electricity. We collect together with the new species that we were talking about. So you can see that it has a very slender body and it's got like this eel-like morphology. And those are adaptations for this fish to emit electric signals. So here in the Amazon, you can see that in the Atlantic forest, you can see that I'm putting my hands on the fish without further problem, because the species of electric fish here in the Atlantic forest, they don't emit a very strong electricity. But in the Amazon, we have species that can emit up to 1,000 volts of electricity. So accidents are common, but not here in the Atlantic forest.
Wow, that is so cool. We have a YouTuber named Woody, 13 years old, asking, how do we know that the fish that you have found have not yet been discovered?
Oh, I mean, at first, when we are in the field, we are suspicious. We are not very sure. So when we are in the field and we see something different, we take them to the lab to compare. We have like thousands of fish preserved in the laboratory, and we also have tons of scientific literature to make comparisons. So for example, when I'm going to my lab, I have several material to compare this fish that I suspect that is a new species. So I make these comparisons, and if this fish I collected has some new features, I can consider them a new species. So that's what we do. So in the lab, we have a huge archive of fish preserved like this one. So we can make comparisons. So we can look at their fins, at their coloration patterns, at their scales, and also at their sizes. So here I have this, it's not working pretty well because it's kind of old, but we use this equipment to measure the fish. So size also help us to determine if this fish we're looking at is new or not.
We have a YouTuber named Tristan from Denver, and I think they're considering your geography. They want to know, have you ever studied piranhas?
Oh, no, I myself have never studied piranhas, but because when we are working with fish, we tend to specialize in certain species because there are like more than 30,000 species of fish. So we got to pick where we're going to put our efforts into. But I've seen piranhas, and I even swam, I forgot how to say that. I was swimming with piranhas here in the Pantanal, and they are very calm and just chilling. And piranhas can be much more than flesh eaters, so they can also eat fruits, seeds, and some species can even eat plants. So they are very calm species, and lots of species of piranhas exist. So we gotta, think about the piranhas in a more friendly way, because they are usually calm unless they are very stressed.
Well, let's take another YouTuber question. We have got Matt from Victoria's Homeschool in I think the Philippines, and they're asking, I want to try out your work, Miss Elisabeth. How can I start?
Yeah, so first you come here to Brazil so we can work together. I mean, I'm just kidding. So one good way for you to begin is, you can just go out in your yard and explore. I'm not sure if you have the habit of, going around and fish, and there are some good books treating like the fauna of the place where you are. And another very good option is going to museums, like natural history museums. So they have great exhibitions, and great professors and researchers working there. And usually the museums have collaborations with schools and other types of community organizations. And they are very interested in bringing kids and students into their labs, into their exhibitions to learn more and to prepare to be a scientist. So first, go out and explore, you read some books, and then go to the museum and look for someone that will be willing to work with you.
Okay, a couple of you. Now give us a fish if you are 12 or younger. That's a lot of you. So that means that Elisabeth has been collecting fish longer than you've been alive. Crazy. Crazy. All right, we've got a question from a YouTuber. This is coming from Mrs. Schwinn's 4th grade class. And they want to know, what are the names of the fish that you've discovered?
So when we are describing any species, as scientists, we kind of have the right to choose the name of the species. So one of the species I described, I honor National Geographic. So we kind of put the names in a Latin form because the names must be in Latin or Greek. So there are ways for you to pay honor for someone and using those strategies in Latin. So I once described one named Nat Georum in honor to all the Nat Geo team, for example. It was very, very interesting species. The other one, for example, was named Obliquus because it does have some lines on its body that are slightly, how can I say that? Like turned to the side, you know? So we usually pick up a species name or to pay honors to someone or something or institution, or due to a characteristic that we see on the species. I also named the species in honor of a local indigenous population that was nearby the place where I collected species. So it's a very nice job. Thank you for your question.
So some of our YouTubers are asking about fish life cycle. Can you tell us a little bit about a typical fish life cycle?
Yeah, a typical fish life cycle is like they are born from eggs in the water, and these eggs can either be floating or nearby, like the substrate, the floor of the river. And when they eclode as juveniles, that's what we say, and they keep growing and eating, and then they turn. It's a process we call metamorphosis. So it's like a radical change from the juvenile to an adult. So when they are young adults, they keep eating and exploring the habitat and whatever, and then they find a mate, reproduce, and lay new eggs. So a next generation is born. But we have fish, for example, that are not following this overall pattern. So have fish, for example, that have a life cycle that involves living as an egg for like 6 months in a dry pond. So they have a very, very, very fast life cycle because when the pond, when the rain falls and fills the pond, these eggs just eclode, and the fish gotta grow up very quickly for them to find a mate, lay new eggs, and then the pond will dry and they will stay like as eggs for another 6 months. So it's a very quick life cycle. There are lots of variations, but basically it's like egg, juvenile, adult, mate, and another egg.
Wow, that pond situation made me anxious on behalf of the fish. I wonder if fish feel anxiety. Well, we have another YouTuber question. This is coming from Karuna in Ontario, Canada, and they want to know, how deep in depth does your work take you? So have you ever caught a fish really deep in a body of water?
No, this is a nice question because we as humans have some limitations. So the deepest I've ever collected the fish was something like 1.5 meters, which is like my waist around here, because otherwise I would be completely submerged. So I would basically not be able to breathe. So when we want to study fish that are further deep in the river, for example, like 50 meters, we usually have these boats with some bottom trawls. So they have these huge nets and huge equipment to collect right deep in the bottom, and they bring this fish to the surface. So I'm working with a fish that was collected like this, and it lives like 50 meters deep in the Amazon River basin, which is like very deep. So we have this huge fauna of deep fish, but we need special equipment to collect them.
Yeah, I love that you acknowledge that we as humans have limitations. We can't know everything, but we can collaborate. And I know that you have a really incredible team. What is it like working with your team?
Yeah, it's amazing. They are much more than my collaborators. They are my friends. So we are personal friends. So for example, one of them is getting married next year, and I'll be the model, I'll be helping him to build their marriage. So this personal connection we have with our collaborators is very important because it facilitates communication. So we know what everyone's feeling and how everyone's feeling, what everyone's studying, what are we curious about. So teamwork is very important. I mean, we alone cannot do anything. Can you imagine, like, me as a woman going by myself to the Amazon to collect fish? I mean, that would be impossible. So we need not only our team of scientific collaborators, but also local people that understand the importance of our work and that they're helping us and sharing their knowledge on the region and on the fauna that they know much better than we do, for example.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I know we're headed towards the end of the show. Thank you so much for being with us. Can we do one more question with you, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do it. So when you're thinking about what kind of message that you want all of the viewers and all of the young explorers watching today, what do you want us to take away from learning with you?
Well, my message would be for all of you to keep curious and don't forget to explore around, keep exploring the wonders of the place where you live when you travel with your family and friends. Just keep curious and learning, learn from others and work with your colleagues. Teamwork and curiosity are very important for you to be a scientist, are the basic feelings you need to keep feeding throughout your life to be a scientist. So curiosity and teamwork, empathy, basically.
Well, obrigada. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
De nada. Obrigada.
Well, everyone watching, I know that we've had an amazing time with Elisabeth. Can you give her a fishy wave as a thank you? And also to the students and the teachers and the homeschoolers watching, thank you for being with us today. You are the reason that we even have this experience. And I want you to know that today's fun and excitement doesn't end. We have a whole season planned of incredible episodes for you to participate in. So please go to natgeoed.org/Explorer Classroom. We want you to register and request a chance to be on screen with us for future episodes. And our next event is in 2 weeks. We're going to have a bit of a break. So on Thursday, October 12th, we will be joined by explorer and storyteller Babak Tafreshi. We're going to learn about a special project he leads called The World at Night. He uses photography to increase awareness of the value of natural nighttime environments and how we can preserve this from light pollution. Have you ever heard of light pollution? I know it's a really fascinating concept. So please register and join us on October 12th. Have a great day, everyone. Stay curious, keep exploring. Best fishes to you all. We'll see you next time.